Xia Huaishu hated me so much that in the next life, he only wished to die without ever seeing me again. He schemed to have me take the place of his beloved and marry a young general at the border to bring him good fortune. He wanted to watch me spend my life alone with only an oil lamp and ancient Buddha statues. But he never imagined that in this life, it would still be me sitting on the imperial throne. However, the one who ascended to that supreme position was no longer him. Chapter 1. 2 imperial decrees of marriage were issued from the palace. One was for me, and the other was for my younger sister, Song Qingwan. Unlike in my previous life, Song Qingwan was betrothed to Xia Huaishu, while I, the legitimate daughter of the duke's mansion, was betrothed to General Hua. After the eunuch announced the decree, the crowd kneeling before the duke's mansion rose to their feet. I am old and my hearing is failing. My grandmother hesitated and asked, "May I ask the eunuch? Did the emperor decree that Jin Yuan is to be married to the Hua family? And Qingwan to Prince Huai?" The lead eunuch smiled. "Even if you gave me 10 lives, I dare not dare to misinterpret the emperor's decree." Everyone present was stunned. No matter what, it should have been me marrying into the imperial family, and Song Qingwan marrying to the border. Only I remained calm, watching the scene unfold before me. A month earlier, the emperor had encountered an old Taoist priest during his inspection tour in Jiangnan. The old Taoist was highly skilled in divination, able to foresee the future with remarkable accuracy. It was said that the old Taoist had accurately predicted the 7 consecutive days of heavy rain this month, which caused the Luo River to burst its banks. Such a divine being, I had never heard of him in my previous life. After the flood receded, the emperor's edict granting the marriage was issued shortly thereafter. I'm sure the old Taoist not only predicted the flood but also foretold other events. I suddenly recalled my past life when Xia Huaishu, drunk, choked me by the neck with bloodshot eyes. If it weren't for your schemes, Qingwan wouldn't have met such a tragic end in that barren borderland. Back then, I spared her life and let her go. That was already merciful of me. I smiled at him. "Xia Huaishu, what are you afraid of? I'm just a weak woman. If you exert a little force, my neck would snap in your hands." He still let go of me. "Killing you would be too boring. I want to make you wish you were dead." It wasn't until after he ascended the throne that I learned he had always loved Song Qingwan. The bond of childhood sweethearts couldn't withstand love at first sight. After Song Qingwan was married off to the borderlands, she soon became a widow. Later, while fleeing back to the capital, she was killed by bandits. After her death, a letter she left behind made me the scapegoat for her murder. Xia Huaishu had hated me to the bone. However, to use me and secure his position as emperor, he pretended to be a loving husband for years. "Song Jin Yuan," he said, coldly, "the greatest regret of my life is making you a cruel woman, my empress." In his previous life, he often said that marrying me was his greatest regret. If there was a next life, Xia Huaishu would certainly avoid me until death. That's why the imperial decree for the arranged marriage was changed this time. So he had also been reborn. Song Qingwan heard the decree and her eyes lit up with joy. She walked over to my side and whispered in a voice only the two of us could hear, "Sister, I heard that the border region is a harsh and cold place. I wonder if you, a pampered princess, can endure such hardships." I ignored her, brushed the dust off my skirt, and walked toward the courtyard. Song Qingwan stepped forward to block my path. "Sister, you probably don't know, but that young General Hua is severely injured. Maybe you can marry him to bring him some good luck." She couldn't contain her excitement and covered her mouth with a smile. "If you marry him and he dies, you'll have to be a widow for the rest of your life." At that time, the news of Hua Changfeng's severe injuries had not yet reached the capital. This must have been told to her by Xia Huaishu. I curled my lips. "You told me this news to make me run away from the marriage?" Her eyes widened instantly. Are you daring to defy the imperial decree? The marriage to the Hu family was arranged by my father with great effort for you. Yet it ended up falling on me. I raised my eyes to ask her. Do you know why my father loved you so much yet wanted to marry you off to such a remote place? She met my icy gaze. Her eyelashes trembling. Why? Why? The smile on my lips grew wider, because he was afraid he couldn't protect your life. Her almond-shaped eyes widened. What do you mean by that? I curved my lips at her. But my voice remained cold. If you don't want to die a violent death like your mother, don't provoke me. Song Qingwan's biological mother was once a maid in my mother's service. When my mother was gravely ill, she climbed into my father's bed. My mother said that my father favoring a concubine was no great sin. But Li Ying'er wasn't one to stay in her place. She came from a brothel, was beautiful, and had entered the mansion with the intention of climbing her way to become the mistress. However, when she entered the mansion, it was just after my father and mother had recently married. My father sent Li Ying'er to serve in my mother's quarters. My mother was strict in managing her servants, and Li Ying'er had long harbored resentment toward her. She used the pretext of caring for my mother to have an affair with my father in a side room. She let the sounds of their lovemaking drift into my mother's room. However, at that time, my mother had no time to deal with her. She was busy arranging my future before she died. My grandmother had always favored my younger brother, the legitimate son, and my father was unreliable. If she were gone, no one would be able to raise me properly. At that time, the turmoil in the palace had just subsided, and the new emperor ascended the throne with the support of his ministers. My mother's aunt had no blood relation with the new emperor. Yet she ascended to the position of Empress Dowager. My mother wrote a letter requesting the Empress Dowager to take me in and raise me. But the old nurse who attended her closely advised. The Empress Dowager is cunning and calculating. If the young lady grows up by her side, she might also. Your aunt is the wisest woman in our clan. She merely obtained the power and influence she desired. If she were a man, no one would accuse her of being calculating. If Jin Yuan were under her protection, she would surely grow up safely and smoothly. My mother covered her mouth with her hand and coughed twice, blood seeping through her fingers. She merely wiped it away with a silk handkerchief and continued writing. The candlelight illuminated my mother's gentle features, and the ink from her pen smudged on the paper. She said, "In truth, what does it matter if one has a calculating mind, as long as one can protect oneself and obtain what one desires?" When my mother passed away, I was only 2 years old and was taken into the palace by the Empress Dowager to be raised. On the day I returned to the Duke's mansion after coming of age, I asked the Empress Dowager, "Empress Dowager, last month when I left the palace, I encountered Yunxiu, who had once served by my mother's side. She told me that although my mother was gravely ill at the time, the imperial physician said she could live for another 2 years. Why then did she not survive beyond 2 years? I remember the imperial physician said your mother died of an incurable illness." The Empress Dowager paused in her movement of holding the teacup. A flash of cruelty crossing her eyes. Perhaps the imperial physician's words cannot be fully trusted. I have investigated. The imperial physician who treated my mother passed away 3 months after retiring to his hometown. Those who served by her side have either died or been sold into slavery. What did you find out? I lowered my eyes and said, "We couldn't find anything about the people who served my mother. So I had someone from my grandmother's entourage bound and interrogated using palace methods. They revealed that my mother died from a sudden attack of anger. Your father and grandmother were renowned for their dignity. High-ranking families are like that, they always avoid exposing family scandals." The Empress Dowager sneered, her gaze fixed on me. "What do you intend to do?" I looked at her intently and said, "Family scandals should not be exposed. Your words are enough for me." On the day I returned to the mansion, the old woman Zhao, who had been kidnapped by bandits, was also redeemed by my grandmother and returned to the duke's mansion. Zhao's wounds had not yet healed, but she was eager to return to my grandmother's side to serve her. When I went to pay my respects to my grandmother, Lady Li also arrived. Shortly after I entered the palace, she gave birth to Song Qingwan, and in recent years, she has also given birth to a son. My father dotes on her, and she is dressed in silk and brocade, adorned in luxurious finery, behaving like a proper wife, with no trace of her status as merely a concubine in the mansion. Li Ai, naturally, grew arrogant from her favor, and my grandmother grew increasingly displeased with her. When Aunt Li knelt down to pay her respects, my grandmother did not allow her to rise, instead continuing to make small talk with me. Soon, Aunt Zhao brought out the tea. This is the rain before the dragonwell tea that the eldest miss brought from the palace. I used snow water collected from plum blossoms last year to brew it. My grandmother took a sip from the teacup and said to me, "This tea is truly fragrant. The Empress Dowager's gifts to you are indeed of the highest quality." I held the teacup and looked at Aunt Li, who was kneeling on the ground, and said softly, "Auntie, please try this tea as well." Only then did grandmother allow Aunt Li to rise. Aunt Li took the teacup handed to her by Zhao Ma, drank 2 sips, and then set it down. Her expression was displeased. She stood up and bowed to my grandmother, saying, "Madam, I am not feeling well. I will take my leave." My grandmother watched her departing figure and snorted coldly. Look at her arrogant manner. Such fine tea, and she drinks it as if she's had it all her life. Your father has been bewitched by her. Whatever good things there are in the mansion, he sends them all to her courtyard. I tugged at my lips, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. Lady Li has borne children for the duke's mansion. It's only natural that father favors her. The grandmother looked at me and said, "The children she bore are merely illegitimate. How can they compare to you and Yuan Gu? The legitimate children? Whether they were legitimate or illegitimate, I didn't care. I only cared whether anyone would stand in the way of my brother and me. When my brother was young, grandmother spoiled him excessively. She felt sorry for him having to go to school even on snowy days. So he hadn't even started his formal education by the age of 6. I pleaded with the Empress Dowager for a long time to give Song Yuan the opportunity to enter the palace as a companion to the prince. I urged him to study diligently every day, which is why he has the knowledge he has today. Today, Lady Li is wearing a gold hairpin shaped like a peony. This peony design is reserved for the main wife. If she were in the palace, Lady Li would have lost her life for such audacity. I set down my teacup and sighed softly. It's only because grandmother is so lenient. Everyone in the mansion knew that grandmother and Lady Li had been at odds for years, and now grandmother had finally found an excuse to deal with her. Lady Li knelt in the blazing sun for a full hour before my father returned home and allowed her to enter the house. It was said that Lady Li wept uncontrollably that night, and my father stayed in her room to comfort her. As the night grew dark, while they were together, Lady Li suddenly began bleeding from all 7 orifices and died in my father's arms. My father's screams echoed through the night sky of the duke's mansion. Back then, my mother was driven to an early death by them. Now, this is karma. It took several days for my father to regain his senses. The coroner determined that Aunt Li had died from poisoning. That day, Aunt Li had only drunk a cup of tea in my grandmother's room. My father dared not confront my grandmother openly, fearing that it would bring shame upon the duke's mansion and cause others to mock its internal turmoil. Thus, he kept the matter hidden. The relationship between mother and son grew increasingly strained. The Empress Dowager was right, this duke's mansion truly values appearances above all else. My grandmother disliked Lady Li and, by extension, her 2 children. She had secretly cursed Song Qingwan countless times, saying her seductive ways were inherited from her mother. Fearing that my grandmother would eventually harm Song Qingwan, my father went to great lengths to arrange her marriage to the Hua family. Song Qingwan didn't understand the meaning behind my words. She stomped her feet angrily and said, "You're trying to scare me. Just wait until I tell Prince Huai." The dangers in the palace were no less than those on the frontiers. And I didn't know if Xia Huaishu could protect her for the rest of his life. I didn't bother with her and walked straight to Song Yuan's courtyard. Song Yuan was only a year younger than me, but he seemed to be very afraid of me. As soon as I stepped into the study, he hurriedly flipped open a book. "Sister." I was reviewing my lessons. I just finished a bowl of sweet porridge. Watching Song Yuan fumble around, I couldn't imagine that this man had once been a marquis and chancellor in his previous life, holding the highest position in the court. Even Emperor Xia Huaishu had to heed his every word. In his previous life, Xia Huaishu had long feared him. Now that he had been reborn, he would surely eliminate him without a trace. I sat down across from him and said to him, "The Emperor has ordered me to marry far away to the border. On this journey, I'm unfamiliar with the place and feel a bit scared. Will you accompany me? My sister is afraid too." He looked up at me, his eyes showing no hesitation. "If my sister asks me to accompany you, I will." "But," I interrupted him, "don't worry. I have a way to get you out of this duke's mansion." Song Yuan hesitated for a moment, and I thought he had changed his mind. To my surprise, he smiled and said, "If you don't want to marry, you can go find the Empress Dowager. Perhaps she can arrange a different husband for you. The Empress Dowager is at the imperial retreat convalescing. I don't want to disturb her peace over such a matter." I laughed softly. "Actually, it doesn't matter who it is. Even without the Emperor's arranged marriage, my marriage has never been something I could decide for myself. Not only did Xia Huaishi regret it, but I did too. No matter who I marry in this lifetime, I don't want to have anything to do with Xia Huaishu anymore." The next day, the wedding procession from the Hua mansion arrived at the gates of the Duke's mansion. In my previous life, it was Song Qingwan who left. But this time, it was me. After years of estrangement, I was not close to my father, and he did not shed tears like he did when he sent Song Qingwan off to her wedding in my previous life. It was my grandmother who squeezed out a few tears and handed me a pair of white jade bracelets. I took the bracelets and glanced at the pair of translucent green jade bracelets on Song Qingwan's wrist. This grandmother who had always claimed to love me the most was the most skilled at flattery and opportunism. I instructed my personal maid, Xiao Hong, to put the bracelets away and boarded the carriage. As the curtain fell, I heard my father ask the steward, "Where is Song Yuan? He's always been closest to his elder sister. Why didn't he come to see us off? The young master had a high fever last night and just took some medicine this morning. He said he wouldn't be able to come." Song Yuan, dressed as a servant, looked at me and whispered, "Sister, the excuse of having smallpox can only be kept up for half a month at most. If the young tutor finds out, you'll surely be beaten. Don't worry. Your father and grandmother will cover for you. After all, you're the one who skipped out of school to come send me off. It's a disgrace to the Duke's mansion. But it's all because my sister is marrying so far away. It'll be hard to see each other again." I looked at Song Yuan's blushing expression and couldn't help but laugh. He raised his eyes to me. "Sister, what are you laughing at?" I shook my head. "Nothing. It's just been so many years since I've seen you like this." In my previous life, after Song Yuan entered officialdom, the clarity in his eyes had vanished, replaced by growing cruelty. It was he who supported me, ensuring my secure position in the imperial harem. Song Yuan and I traveled together, enjoying the scenery, and our pace was much slower. By the time the carriages reached Ningyuan City, General Hua had already passed away. The general's mansion was shrouded in mourning, with funeral banners hanging low. "You kept this news hidden all the way here just to lure my sister to the border?" Song Yuan clenched his fists tightly, looking at me with concern. You are the legitimate daughter of the Duke's mansion. How could you endure such humiliation? In my previous life, I had been married to Xia Huaishu for 20 years. I knew his ways too well. He must have kept the news from me, just like he did in my previous life, forcing me to marry into the Hu family like Song Qingwan did. I sneered. He's overthinking it. Even if I were to marry a dead man, I wouldn't marry him. Song Yuan heard my mutter and turned to ask me. Sister, what did you say? Nothing. Whether I marry or not is unimportant. What matters is staying alive. Song Yuan sighed. Thank goodness you let me accompany you. Otherwise, I would have been the one to drink that poison soup. Just yesterday, news came from the capital that a servant in Song Yuan's courtyard had stolen some soup from the kitchen and died from poisoning. The truth about Song Yuan's illness was thus exposed. It wasn't in vain that I came out this time. It saved Song Yuan from a disaster. The gatekeeper of the Hu mansion reported the news, and General Hu quickly came out to meet us. Having just lost his son, he was emaciated and gaunt. Miss Song, please return home. I will report your engagement to the emperor, and the marriage will be annulled. I watched as several panicked soldiers passed by the funeral hall and whispered, Has something happened at the general's mansion? General Hu did not respond. I took a step forward and lowered my voice. Has someone been attacked in the mansion? My daughter has some knowledge of poison. General Hu's expression grew serious, and he hurriedly said, Miss Song, please follow me. I was led into a room by General Hu. As soon as I stepped inside, the smell of blood hit me. On the bed lay a man with no color in his face and lips turning purple. I recognized him. It was Xia Yuan. In my previous life, aside from Song Yuan, the person Xia Huaishu feared most was this renowned general, the Prince of Su, whose military achievements overshadowed even the emperor. The military doctor handed me a small piece of an arrowhead removed from Xia Yuan's body. This is the poisoned arrow taken from the prince's body. I have temporarily suppressed the poison's effects, but my knowledge is limited, and I cannot identify the poison or prepare an antidote. Do you recognize this poison? I took the poisoned arrow and looked at Lin, the deputy general beside Xia Yuan. This sleeve arrow can shoot up to 6 zheng. There must be a traitor within the general's mansion. Everyone in the mansion has been taken under control, but the prince's poison has already taken effect. It's too late to interrogate them now. I took the poisoned arrow and walked out of the room. The mansion guards were waiting in the courtyard. I scrutinized the crowd. Sure enough, among them was an old acquaintance from my previous life, the shadow guard Wu Hen by Xia Huaishu's side. Wu Hen could kill without leaving a trace. In my previous life, he had helped Xia Huaishu eliminate countless people in the shadows. I walked up to him, and he remained composed, bowing to me. Before he could speak, I thrust the blood-stained poisoned arrow into his arm with all my strength. Wu Hen's pupils contracted sharply. Everyone watched the scene in shock. The silence so thick you could hear a pin drop. I know you're all the prince's loyal guards. I took a step back and smiled at Wu Hen. Then let you test this poison for the prince. The poison on the arrowhead took effect quickly. Wu Hen's lips turned purple, his face pale, and he collapsed to the ground. He struggled and reached into his chest, pulling out a pill. I shouted, That's the antidote. Lin, the deputy general, quickly snatched the pill from his hand and looked at me in a daze. I nodded and said, This is the antidote. Take it to the prince. Lin left with the antidote. I looked at Wu Hen lying on the ground and frowned. You wouldn't only have one antidote, would you? Wu Hen glared at me fiercely, and blood quickly trickled from the corners of his eyes. He coughed up a mouthful of black blood and soon drew his last breath. I never expected that Xia Huaishu's most skilled secret guard would die like this. I averted my gaze and turned back into the house. By then, Xia Yuan had already taken the antidote, and his complexion had eased considerably. He narrowed his eyes at me and asked, "How did you find the assassin?" I paused for a moment before saying, "I once saw this man by the side of the Prince of Huai." I thought, given the relationship between His Highness and the Prince of Huai, he wouldn't send someone to protect His Highness so closely. Would he? Xia Yuan curved his lips slightly. "Miss Song is truly wise. Thank you for saving my life." Xia Yuan had Lin, the deputy general, personally escort me out. As soon as I stepped out the door, Song Yuan rushed in from outside the courtyard, his voice trembling as he spoke to me. "I just saw a bloodied corpse being carried out. They said it was the assassin. Are you okay, older sister?" I froze for a moment, then realized that in Song Yuan's eyes, I was still his fragile older sister. "I'm fine, older sister. The assassin. Stay away from me." As I finished speaking, I caught a glimpse out of the corner of my eye that Lin's eyes twitched slightly. General Hu's younger sister, Xian Fei, was Xia Yuan's biological mother. 12 years ago, after Xian Fei passed away, Xia Yuan was exiled to Ningyuan City by the emperor and never returned to the capital. Everyone in the capital knew that Xia Yuan was the least favored prince. However, he was the only remaining bloodline of the Hu family. General Hu, grateful that I had saved Xia Yuan's life, treated me with the courtesy due to a distinguished guest. But those around him whispered, "The emperor learned of the young general's death for the country several days ago and did not issue an edict summoning Miss Song back to the capital. It seems the emperor intends for Miss Song to marry the young general's spirit tablet." General Hu, upon hearing this, roared angrily, "This is absurd. Miss Song just saved Xia Yuan's life." I whispered, "If I marry into the Hu family, even if my husband is gone, I can still live a life of ease and comfort." Song Yuan looked at me in disbelief. "Sister, you're willing to. Have you lost your mind?" But I put down the teacup and suddenly changed the subject. "Compared to this, General, you should think carefully about the assassin. He is under the command of Prince Huai. If Prince Huai ascends the throne in the future, both Prince Su and the Hu family will have no way to survive." General Hu narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean, miss?" Song Yuan hurriedly covered my mouth. "My sister is just a weak woman. Don't take her words to heart." General Hu. I pried Song Yuan's hands away, glared at him, and continued. "What I mean is, there's a traitor within the general's mansion. The most urgent matter now is to conduct a thorough investigation. Prince Huai is cunning. Once he ascends the throne, he might frame the general." General Hu reacted. "I'll immediately dispatch my men to investigate." I took the opportunity to push Song Yuan out. My younger brother is not only intelligent but also meticulous in his thinking. He might be able to assist the general. General Hu nodded. "Then we'll trouble Mr. Song." After Song Yuan bowed and withdrew, he whispered in my ear, "So that's what my sister meant." I thought, "What did you think?" Song Yuan rolled his eyes. "Nothing." I sneered inwardly. Did Song Yuan just think I was trying to incite the Hu family to rebel and have Xia Yuan compete with Xia Huaishu, the eldest son, for the throne? Such a thing couldn't be said outright. Of course, I had to use some tactics and stir things up behind the scenes. In a previous life, the Hu family, a clan of noble officials for generations, had fallen into decline due to a war. The soldiers sent to request reinforcements were killed, and General Hu led his 5,000 elite troops in a desperate 7-day battle, only to be slaughtered by tens of thousands of enemy soldiers. Xia Huaishu seemed to have known about this in advance and had already sent men to Ningyuan City to escort Song Qingwan back to the capital. However, when Song Qingwan returned to the capital with the money, she was killed by bandits. Xia Huaishu's men only found her body when he presented the letter filled with hatred that Song Qingwan had left in her embrace and confronted me. The news of General Hua's death had not yet reached the capital. At that moment, I wondered how Xia Huaishu could have known the situation at the border in advance. Unless this was all part of his plan. At my reminder, Song Yuan began investigating the assets of the soldiers under General Hua. He soon discovered that the mother of one of General Hua's close confidants, who came from a poor background, actually owned a mansion in the capital. Under severe torture, she confessed that the mansion had been gifted by Lu Xiang. Lu Xiang was none other than Xia Huaishu's maternal grandfather. In his previous life, Lu Xiang had plotted to eliminate rivals and secure Xia Huaishu's early ascension to the throne by orchestrating the execution of General Hua, a loyal general. After General Hua's death, the border regions fell, and Xia Huaishu was forced to cede territory to seek peace. Had it not been for Xia Yuan's months-long fierce battles, driving the enemy back 300 li, Xia Huaishu's kingdom would have been at the mercy of others. General Hua, upon seeing the blood-stained confession, immediately ordered military execution and the beheading of the traitor. I gave Song Yuan a meaningful glance. Song Yuan stood up and pleaded, "General Hua, if you kill him now, it might alert the enemy and they might plant other traitors among your ranks. Spare his life, and whatever information he sends back in the future will still be under your control." I stared at Song Yuan, as if I were seeing the cunning strategist Song Xiang from my previous life. He truly was the man I had nurtured with all my heart. At that moment, I did not notice that my expression had been fully observed by Xia Yuan, who was sitting across from me. The smile on my lips had not yet faded when I raised my eyes to meet his gaze. It carried a hint of scrutiny. He curved his lips and asked me. I seemed to recall that in the palace, Miss Song always treated the second prince the best. Why is that now? My heart sank suddenly. Xia Huaishu and I had been childhood sweethearts. Everyone knew I was deeply in love with him. Yet now, I had suddenly become his sworn enemy. I couldn't possibly explain to Xia Yuan that it was because I had been reborn that I felt this way. Could I? At that moment, General Hua cleared his throat. Miss Song is a woman of great virtue. She wouldn't dwell on such trivial matters of the heart. My posture suddenly straightened. After the banquet ended, Song Yuan pondered for a moment, then quickly walked over to my side and asked, "Everyone used to say that you would marry Prince Huai, and I always thought you were in love with him. But now it seems that's not the case." I curved my lips, preparing to hear him praise my wisdom, but suddenly heard him say, "Could it be that you are in love with Prince Su?" My feet stumbled, and I nearly fell down the stone steps. I didn't. I turned and glared at Song Yuan, only to see Xia Yuan standing not far away, looking in my direction. I froze for a moment, then quickly ran away. Song Yuan followed behind me, asking, "Sister, if you didn't, then why are you running?" When I ran back to the house, my heart was pounding in my throat. I drank several cups of water before my emotions settled. I had thought that even if we had been entangled in a previous life, meeting Xia Yuan again in this life would be like meeting a stranger. My mind was restless, and I didn't fall asleep until late at night. In a daze, I dreamed of my previous life. At that time, Xia Huaishu had already secured the throne and made me his empress. A virtuous and kind empress, yet neglected. I accompanied Xia Huaishu to the throne, but I didn't know when our once deep love had turned into strangers. Xia Huaishu's most favored concubine looked like me in her eyes and had a personality similar to mine in the past. Everyone said that Xia Huaishu still had feelings for me, but I found it laughable. I wasn't even dead yet, and he had already found a replacement. That replacement, relying on her favor, dared to offend me. I had her kneel at the palace gates as punishment. Within just 2 hours, blood pooled beneath her. The imperial physician said she had miscarried. Xia Huaishu was enraged and ordered me to copy Buddhist scriptures in the Buddha Hall for a month. It was during that time that I discovered the Buddha Hall in the palace. the most peaceful and serene place. When I couldn't sleep, I often went there to rest. One quiet night, I was lying on the desk when I was awakened by the sound of movement behind the screen. Your Majesty, I have investigated and found that Lady Lan was not pregnant. She bribed the imperial physician to frame the empress. I know. Xia Huaishu stared at an unnamed tablet before the Buddha statue and coldly said, I deliberately punished her to copy sutras here, to make her kneel before Qingwan's spirit tablet every day and atone for her sins. If it weren't for her, Qingwan would never have met such a tragic end in a barbarian land. Qingwan. That unnamed tablet was actually Song Qingwan's. I realized that compared to me, Lady Lan's features bore a stronger resemblance to Song Qingwan's. After Song Qingwan's death, Xia Huaishu had shown me her suicide note and confronted me with it. He believed my explanation. He even comforted me, saying he understood me and that I could never be as cruel as the letter claimed. So he was lying to me all along when he said he trusted me. I had almost forgotten about Song Qingwan, but I never imagined that the Song Qingwan who had been dead for so long was the one in Xia Huaishu's heart. Xia Huaishu asked Wu Hin, are all the preparations ready? Everything is ready. But Your Majesty, no matter how much you despise her, she is still the Empress. Doing this might tarnish Your Majesty's reputation. Just make sure it's done discreetly. If she hadn't threatened her father to send Qingwan to the border, Qingwan wouldn't have lost her purity and been raped to death. Xia Huaishu's voice was cold and ruthless as he gritted his teeth and said, I will make her taste that humiliation as well. After so many years of marriage, he actually wanted to use such a despicable method to kill me. I shivered with cold, hiding behind the screen, my limbs stiff for a long time. Later, Wu Hin couldn't find an opportunity to act in my chambers, so he had to wait until the mid-autumn banquet. At the banquet, I swapped the poisoned wine with Xia Huaishu, who then bestowed it upon Xia Yuan, who had just been rewarded for his military achievements. Xia Yuan couldn't hold his liquor and retired to the side hall to rest. I stared at the unnatural flush on his face and sensed something was terribly wrong. Before returning to my chambers, I sneaked to the side hall. I took out the antidote I had prepared and was about to feed it to him when he suddenly opened his eyes. He grabbed my wrist tightly. The heat from his palm seeped through the fabric, making the air feel scorching. I looked at him and whispered, the wine you drank was laced with poison by Xia Huaishu. This is the antidote. He furrowed his brows and asked in a hoarse voice. Then, where is the antidote? The pill in my hand had fallen to the ground earlier due to his movement, and I had no idea where it had rolled to. My voice trembled. It fell. Xia Yuan took a deep breath. If you run out now, you might still have a chance to survive. I took 2 steps back, then stopped and walked up to Xia Yuan. I wrapped my arms around his shoulders and looked up at him. If I run away, I'll truly have no way out. Xia Yuan's eyes darkened, filled with pain. He didn't understand the meaning behind my words, nor did he have time to think it through. His grip on my waist was so tight it hurt. Xia Yuan lowered his head and kissed my lips fiercely. The night was deep, and dew fell on the peony flowers outside the window. I was thrown onto a soft couch, and Xia Yuan grabbed my ankles, pulling me into a sea of heat. It wasn't until dawn that I dragged my exhausted body back to my own chambers. By then, the guards who had been ordered to ruin my reputation had been turned into bloody corpses and carried out of the palace. Xia Huaishu mocked me. Song Jin Yuan, how dare you do such a shameful thing and still have the nerve to sit on the empress's throne? I lowered my eyes to my nails, freshly painted with coal, and smiled. Your Majesty, I tried it with others first to see that your skills in bed are nothing special.